This is a video presentation of Chapter 3, Section 8 in the 7th grade textbook entitled Adding and Subtracting Mixed Numbers. A very good place for us to go from yesterday. If you remember yesterday, we just dealt with fractions, pure fractions. Today, they're going to mix it up a little bit, no pun intended, by going with mixed numbers instead. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first question here. They're starting us right off with a word problem. But again, we're not going to let that panic us because it's a question in the section about adding and subtracting mixed numbers. So chances are they want us to add or subtract some mixed numbers here. So it says Kevin is 48 and 3/8 inches tall. Keith is 5 and 5/8 inches taller. How tall is Keith? So since he's that much taller, that means it's going to be a bigger amount. And because that means it's going to be a bigger amount, that would of course imply addition. All right, the only way that wouldn't make any sense is if we were adding a negative, because adding a negative would actually make the number go down. But there's no negatives here. The numbers have to get bigger, so that's going to be pure adding. So as you can see, what they do is they break this question down into a couple parts. They want you to put the whole number parts together, the 48 and the 5, and they want you to put the fraction parts together, the 3/8 and the 5/8. And then what you'll do is after you take care of each of those pieces of the problem, you're going to recombine them and have one answer at the end. Now, of course, the whole number parts, that's not a big deal. But when you have the fraction parts, you might have to get a common denominator in that step like we did yesterday. So let's start with the 48 and the 5 here, which is exactly where they start. 48 and 5 go together to make 53, which is what they're showing you right there. So that somehow is going to be part of the answer. And then the second part of what they do is the fraction part. So they're asking us to combine the 3/8 and the 5/8. Well, if I combine 3/8 and 5/8, remember the denominator would stay the same, 8. And I'm going to combine the numerators 3 and 5, which is going to go together to make 8. So that is really 8/8. Well, 8/8, as you already know, simplifies to make 1, because 8 divided by 8 is 1. So this is really 53 being combined with 1. Well, 53 and 1 go together to make 54. And that would be the answer to our question. Let's make sure we can put that in context, though, because that was asking us about Keith's height. We're going to say that Keith is 54 inches tall. We just don't want to say 54 here. Put it in context of the question. Kevin is 54 inches tall. Okay, number 2, we're going to add, and we're going to write our answers in simplest form. All right, so we're going to do the same thing we did in the last question. However, this is not a word question, so we don't have to extrapolate any information here. We can just go ahead and combine things here. So we've got 9 and 2, or 9 and 12 rather, from the whole number parts of this question, 9 and 2/3 plus 12 and 2/3, 9 and 12 being the whole numbers. We can combine those first, as they're showing you here. 9 and 12 go together to make 21. And then we're going to go ahead and combine the fraction parts. So we've got 2/3 and 2/3, and again, that's kind of nice because they gave us questions with a common denominator. Denominator is going to stay 3, and we're going to add the numerators, my 2 and my 2, to make 4 here. So this is 21 plus 4/3. Now, obviously, that would be an issue for me because I cannot combine an improper fraction with a whole number and come up with something that I would call a mixed number, because that would not be a mixed number because the improper fraction would be in there. So what you have to do now is rename this 4/3 as its own mixed number. 3 goes into 4 one time, would leave a remainder of 1, and the denominator would stay 3. 4/3 is 1 1/3. You're going to combine that with the 21 in the same way we tried to do here. Combine the whole number parts. 21 and 1 go together to make 22. And the 1/3 that I left behind gets combined with that 22 for a final answer of 22 and 1/3. So 9 and 2/3 plus 12 and 2/3 is 22 and 1/3. And that's really renaming with addition. And we can also end up renaming with subtraction when the fraction in the first part there would be smaller than the fraction in the second part, except the renaming will happen a lot sooner in order to make the subtraction feasible. And I'm sure we'll see that later on. Here's 5 1/8 plus 3 5/6. So again, we have different denominators here, so we're going to have to start off and get a common denominator. Common denominator of 8 and 6 is 24. The 8 list goes 8, 16, 24, 32. The 6 list goes 6, 12, 18, 24. The match is at 24. So the least common denominator, the least common multiple of the denominators here is 24. So we're changing the denominators of our fraction parts of the mixed numbers into 24s here. So to change 8 into 24 from the first fraction means we would have had to multiply by 3, because 8 times 3 is 24. So I'm going to multiply the 1 times 3 as well. 1 times 3 is 3. To change the 6 into 24, that means I would have had to multiply by 4. So I'm going to multiply the top by 4 as well. 5 times 4 is 20. So we've got 5 3 24ths plus 3 20 24ths, which is now the problem I'm going to solve here. Well, I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did in the previous questions. I'm going to combine the whole number parts, which are 5 and 3 here, which are going to go together to make 8. And 3 24ths and 20 24ths are going to go together to make 23 24ths. Remember, the denominator stays the same, which is why 24 is in the answer still, and the 20 and 3 just get combined with addition because that's what this question says. It says addition in the middle. Now I'm just going to put these two together for one solid answer, and I end up with 8 and 23 24ths. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at number 3 here. They're switching it up and switching this to the subtraction sign, as you can see. The directions ask us to subtract and to write the answer in simplest form. 4 2/3 minus 2 1/3. So we'll go ahead and subtract, and we'll do the same thing we did with the addition part. We're going to do these in parts. So we're going to treat the whole numbers first, the 4 and the 2. Again, the difference being that this is subtraction. So 4 minus 2 goes together to make 2. And then as far as the fraction parts, I'm going to do 2/3 minus 1/3. 2/3 minus 1/3 makes 1/3, as you can see right here. Again, we would subtract the numerators, 2 minus 1, which is 1, but the denominator stays 3, which is what you can see right there. Now, some of you might be questioning why there's an addition sign in the middle here when this was a subtraction problem. The reason there's an addition sign in the middle here is listed in red at the bottom of the screen. Remember, we just separated these numbers into parts to solve this question. So all this addition really indicates is that I'm recombining the parts now. It doesn't mean that I'm taking a subtraction problem and really adding here in the same sense. All it really means is I'm recombining the two parts of my answer. So don't let that fool you. It's not something that's meant to trick you or to see if you're really paying all that close attention. It's just a way for the book to say it's time to put your answers back together. And I put these two back together, and I end up with 2 1/3. Here's 12 8/9 minus 8 2/3. So again, we'll have to start off here with a common denominator. Common denominator of the fractions here, 9 and 3, is 9. 9 list would start at 9. The 3 list would go 3, 6, 9. The match is at 9. So the denominator of my fractions has to be 9, which is what you can see they've done right here. That means for this fraction on the left, nothing has to change because it's already over 9. But for the fraction on the right, I'm going to have to triple it to make that change into a 9. And remember, when I say triple it, I mean multiply both the top and the bottom by 3 for 6/9. So 12 and 8 ninths minus 8 and 2/3 has changed into 12 and 8 ninths minus 8 and 6 ninths. Now at this point we can go ahead and look at solving here. Again, we're going to separate this into parts as we've done with all these other questions. So I've got 12 and 8 being subtracted here, which is how I'm going to get 4. And then I'm going to subtract the fraction parts. I've got the 8 ninths and the 6 ninths being subtracted, which as you can see is going to make 2 ninths. 8 minus 6 is 2. The denominator stays 9. 2 ninths. At this point, all I have to do is recombine the parts of my answer. 4 and 2 ninths goes together to make 4 and 2 ninths. So 12 and 8 ninths minus 8 and 2/3 is 4 and 2 ninths. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the check it out examples to finish the notes over Chapter 3, Section 8. Number 1 says Alvin weighs 72 and 2/3 pounds. His baby brother weighs 15 and 1/3 pounds. How much do they weigh together? So since they're asking us how much they weigh together, they're asking us to combine those two results. And of course, since my number would be bigger, that would mean that I'm going to add here. So I'm going to add the 72 and the 15, which is what you can see I'm doing here. And I'm going to add the fraction parts, 2/3 and 1/3, which is what you can see I'm doing here. Again, I'm treating this question in parts, just like I've done all the others. 72 and 15 make 87. 2/3 and 1/3 make 3/3. Well, 3/3 simplifies to 1. So this is really 87 and 1 being put together, which is 88. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at number 2 there. We're supposed to add, and we're going to write the answer in simplest form, 7 and 4/5 plus 10 and 2/5. Well, since we already have a common denominator here of 5, we don't have to do any extra prep work. We can go ahead and break this into parts and solve. We're going to combine the whole number parts, 7 and 10, and combine the fraction parts, 4/5 and 2/5. 7 and 10 go together to make 17. 4/5 and 2/5 goes together to make 6/5. Now, obviously, I cannot write 17 and 6/5 because that's got an improper fraction embedded inside a mixed number then, which is not allowed. So you're going to have to rename 6/5 as its own mixed number and then combine that with 17, which is what you can see down here at the bottom of the slide. 6/5 is the same as 1 and 1/5. 5 goes into 6 one time, would leave me a remainder of 1, which is where the numerator comes from, and the denominator would stay 5. So this is 17 plus 1 and 1/5. 17 and 1 go together to make 18, plus the 5th is 18 and a 5th. So 7 and 4/5 plus 10 and 2/5 is 18 and 1/5. Okay, let's look at number 3, the final example here. We're supposed to subtract, and we're supposed to write our answer in simplest form. 10 and 7/8 minus 4 and 3/4. Well, since we have different denominators here, that means we're going to have to start off and get a common denominator. The common denominator for 8 and 4 is 8. Remember, that is simply the least common multiple of the denominators. So we'd be listing multiples for 8 and 4. And as you can see, I don't really have to work too hard because the match happens right at 8. So the denominators of my fractions both need to be 8 here. The fraction on the left already has it. The fraction on the right does not. Well, to make it be 8, I have to double it, meaning multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 2, which will make that be 6/8. 4 and 6/8 would have a common denominator, so now I can subtract. So I've got 10 and 7/8 minus 4 and 6/8. Again, treat this in parts. So I'm going to subtract the whole number parts, 10 minus 4. 10 minus 4 changes into 6. And as far as the fraction parts, 7/8 minus 6/8, well, subtract the numerators. 7 minus 6 is 1, and the denominator stays 8, 6, and 1